There are some new images for Dune 2021 that have been revealed in Total Film magazine, alongside some new interviews with the cast and director Denis Villeneuve. From new looks at the Atreides, the Harkonnens and the Ornithopters to behind the scenes details, there's lots to discuss surrounding Denis Villeneuve's science fiction epic. In this video, I'm going to be discussing the new images and details from the new edition of Total Film, along with giving my own thoughts towards it. Before I get into it though, if you want to see much more videos on Dune leading up to its release date, then don't forget to support this video by giving it a like rating, subscribing to the channel, and turning on your notifications. Also, feel free to check me out on Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, and Instagram at Cortex Videos, which is all linked in the description below. But without further ado, let's discuss the newest photos and reveals for Dune. So in the new article from Total Film magazine, we get a 20-page spread with loads of new images and details from Denis Villeneuve's film. We get a new cover featuring members of the cast and an exclusive version that was released only for subscribers of the magazine. But inside, we get a fascinating description of some of the aspects, including an extended discussion with the director. Denis has become one of Hollywood's premier talents, impressing audiences with crime drama Sicario, then becoming a mainstream name with his sci-fi epics Arrival and Blade Runner 2049. Next up, the grandest science fiction story of them all, an adaptation on Frank Herbert's seminal novel Dune. It was, the director stresses to Total Film, by far the toughest thing he's ever done. Villeneuve has been dreaming of his Dune movie since he was a teenager, saying, "There are deep pleasures when there are images that you're able to achieve that are close to what you had in mind as a teenager. Then it's orgasmic." But the failures are very difficult because you disappoint the teenager in yourself. As Hans Zimmer, the composer, pointed out, it's very dangerous to try to reach one of your oldest dreams. The very idea of adapting Dune was an inaccessible, out-of-reach dream that the director carried throughout his career as a filmmaker. Timothée Chalamet expressed that Denis said that Paul Atreides was the character he saw his tortured adolescence through, and a figure for him to escape through. But if that was a scary responsibility, it was nothing compared to the fear that Villeneuve had as he faced up to the scale of the world building that was required and to the depth of the interior lives he had to capture. With some new images of Denis directing on set, we also learn about how his other films became primal steps to making the so-called Unfilmable book happen. One of his earliest feature films, Incendies, was shot in the deserts of Wadi Rum, Jordan, which are the very same alien landscapes he would return to almost a decade later for Dune. He says, "I remember taking mental notes at the time, and if I ever do the movie, I'm coming back here and there." That's where Paul sits, but it was a massive fantasy. Denis is the first to admit that he could not have done the film justice a decade ago, and could only achieve it by making stepping stone movies like Arrival, where he learnt to tell interior stories on a large canvas, and with Blade Runner 2049, a test in futuristic world building. He says, "I have some kind of self-destructive device inside me to take projects that are out of my reach." But in those moments of uncertainty, he would turn to a mantra from a book that shaped his adolescence. The quote in reference reads, "I must not fear, fear is the mind killer, fear is the little death that brings total obliteration, I will face my fear." And we learn that Denis Villeneuve did exactly that. Villeneuve states that what made Dune different is that it's wrestling with big themes that are just as relevant now as they were 56 years ago. Dune is a love letter to ecology, and not in a tacky way. The director hopes that the film will help young viewers discover it at a similar formative time of their lives as he did. He notes that Herbert is someone who really embraced ideas that are linked with ecosystems and evolution, and how to dramatize that in the most eloquent and poetic way. Dune is something that, although written in the 60s, recognised the ransacking of the Earth was not without physical consequence, and that it's a lot of what we are dealing with right now. You see that with the way the Harkonnens treat the environment, and the colonisation of the planet is relevant to a lot of the conversations we're having today about the present consequences of the everlasting power structures of oppression. To Denis, it speaks to the planet's plight at large. But alongside some more images on set of Denis with cinematographer Greg Fraser, Jason Momoa, Rebecca Ferguson and more, he began to talk about the experience of filming Dune. The filmmaker said, "The desert is an intimate experience. It makes you meditative, and the more you penetrate it, the deeper you go into yourself. All of this is very cinematic for me, and that's what I was looking for in shooting Dune. I wanted the cast to savour this unique experience. I wanted the film to be believable. I didn't look for exoticism. I wanted everyday light, not perfect sunsets or sunrises. I wanted it to be accessible and understandable. Only then would viewers focus on the characters and their relationships without being distracted. I wanted spaceships that looked like monoliths and were giant. I liked the idea that architecture and transportation can make humans look like humble ants. So the machines in Dune were built with this monumental feeling of loneliness and oppression towards their users." He also added to this by using the Ornithopters as an example. There is something frightening about their size, and in this he followed Mobius's examples. Then, sticking to the book, the machines had to have wings like birds, and so he chose to go even further, prefiguring them as insects. And we can see this in the gorgeous full-scale shot of the Ornithopter, alongside another shot of the director, inside one with Rebecca Ferguson's Lady Jessica. But coming to some of the things said by the cast in the magazine, we learn some funny and also intriguing details about their experience and aspects from the novel. Josh Brolin talked about the practical nature of the project, saying, "It was really fun for me. Unlike the Avengers, which I always describe as like doing black box theatre in 1978, half of this is practical. You're in Jordan, you're in the dunes." And when it comes to a certain Balisette scene, Brolin mentions that even though they shot it, it has unfortunately been cut from the film. He did say, however, that he believes the film is a masterpiece, and it was understandable why the scene wasn't included. Oscar Isaac also knows a thing or two about massive science fiction sagas, with the actor becoming a household name thanks to his portrayal of Poe Dameron in the Star Wars sequel trilogy, and will of course now fly off to another galaxy in the upcoming adaptation. Unsurprisingly, sci-fi fans have drawn comparisons between the two, but when asked by Total Film about having any reservations about jumping from Star Wars to Dune, the actor reveals he had none. He said, "Not really, because the genre of it is not as important to me. It's about who I'm working with and what's the story that we're telling. It's Denis and it's Dune. Sure, there's also some spaceships, but that's really about where the similarities end. It's not a typical sci-fi film, it has elements of that, but it's also a meditation. What Frank Herbert did, and then Denis as well, is to explore those themes of family, of the clashes of cultures, and just put it on a stage that allows you to dream with it." But from Arrakis to Caladan and all the different locations and cast, the new images show how much detail was attained, while at the same time a preservation of familiar notions. Villeneuve says that he wanted the production to feel less otherworldly in the sense that it has some relatability. It wasn't just shooting in real environments, it was also in many other areas of the production. It's more War of the Roses than Star Wars, says the film's costume designers to back this up. The black dresses of the Bene Gesserit, for example, were drawn from tarot cards. The chunky Atreides battle armour was modelled on medieval suits of armour. The Sardaukar mirrored the SS, and the Fremen were Denis' French resistance. And even the still suits had built-in pumps with ventilation to replicate the reserving water aspect from the novel. It's this kind of customization which is explained in the magazine as being different for all of the various actors, and it just shows you the length of detail that Denis and his team went to achieve what they did. Costume designers Jacqueline West and Bob Morgan labelled the film's costumes as medieval, combining the medieval spirituality with a modern feel. Denis ultimately didn't want to create an alien landscape that is so exotic that you feel disconnected, instead making it feel tactile and that it could actually exist there on the planet. But one of the highlights of this whole article, and one which I have posted about and talked about with previous videos, is the possibility of Dune Part 2. Denis Villeneuve says he thinks Part 2 is likely to happen as Warner Brothers and Legendary are 100% behind the project. They feel it would need a really bad outcome at the box office to not have a Part 2 because they love the movie. He even went on to mention Fade Rother and how he had to move things to a second part to give them breathing room. He said, "We had to shovel some things into Part 2 for the mental sanity of everybody. In order to preserve and have time to bring that to the screen, we had to make important choices." So he does lightly suggest that Fade and other elements will be included in the next movie if that indeed does come to fruition. And it wasn't only in Total Film that he addressed the sequels and where the franchise could be going, as in multiple magazines from France and Italy, the director goes even deeper. Villeneuve says that Dune has become a sadly prophetic book, all the more so if we think that it was written in 1965. It contains themes such as the capitalist drift of our society, the failures connected to climate change, and the dangers underlying the clash between religions. In the French magazine La Presse, there were some more comments that added to the conversation when it comes to the follow-ups. Denis stated, "I think it would have to go really badly for the second part not to get the green light. In December we should know. The script will then be relatively well advanced, and I think realistically that we could start filming in the fall of 2022. What intrigued me, however, were the comments the director then made towards a potential trilogy that he could consider. Denis states, "There is the second book, The Messiah of Dune, which could make an extraordinary film. I always saw that there could be a trilogy, after that we'll see." Now obviously Denis is fully focused on Dune Part 1 and down the line Part 2, but with him saying this, it does get us intrigued surrounding how he sees this franchise in the long term. Will it eventually be a trilogy or something that is revisited down the line? Who knows, but what is clear is that Denis wants this to be his pinnacle creative endeavour, one that can include various successful installments on the big screen, and of course the small screen with the spin-off shows. This obviously all depends on the success of Dune and the HBO Max situation, which has already produced multiple flops at the box office, but he's still hoping that he can see his vision fulfilled. In reference to the streaming and his stance on it, he also makes note of another famous filmmaker who has supported and equally fought against the decision. Denis Villeneuve stated that Christopher Nolan supported and advised him after Dune was moved to day and date on HBO Max. He said, "His kindness to me, like that of Emma Thomas, was important, but I sense on WB's part a desire to rebuild bridges." We'll have to see, but it will be interesting to see if Dune does better than some of Warner Brothers' other simultaneous releases on HBO Max, and in regards to Denis' comments, rebuild the trust in their biggest creative talents. But they were all the latest details surrounding the new images and updates for Denis Villeneuve's Dune. It's going to be fascinating to see how all of the things Denis and his crew discussed come to life, and his comments on the idea for a trilogy do get me excited. I really think Denis has the capability to bring something as special as, say, the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and if he pulls off this first film, I think there's always the chance we could see that. Hopefully people support the film when it releases this October and really enjoy the adaptation that Villeneuve, the cast and crew have all brought to the table. But let me know down below in the comment section what you personally think towards the new images and interviews with the cast, alongside your own thoughts on everything said by the director. For more videos surrounding Dune leading up to its release this year, then subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications. Also, if you enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like rating and follow me on social media via the links in the description. I will be continuing to cover news and topics for Dune whenever new information comes out, alongside returning to my Road to Dune series this week with a video essay on Denis Villeneuve's Enemy, so look out for all of these uploads. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I've been Cortex, and as always, make some noise.